Your Denver Broncos are in the perfect situation to contend for a Super Bowl next year. This was the second youngest team in the entire NFL playoffs, and that young and hungry nucleus is just going to be more adapted to the NFL, more used to Sean Payton's system, and frankly, better next year. And in addition to that, Sean Payton has $50 million in cap space that he has to play with this offseason. So whether he sees holes on the offense or holes on the defense, he has the money to do something about it. Plus, he and George Paton have crushed it in the past couple drafts, and I expect that to continue this year. In previous videos this week, we broke down who are some of the receivers that Sean Payton could go and throw that $50 million bag at so that Bo Nix is surrounded with offensive talent. And in this video, we're going to break down what are the options if Sean Payton chooses to use that $50 million to take the defense from good to elite. If you're new to the channel, I'm a diehard Denver Broncos fan. It is good to be back from my trip to Florida. Thank you for putting up with bad audio in an airport yesterday. We're back in the Bat Cave, the man cave, the Broncos cave, and it's great to be back. So let's dive in here. It is great to see the Denver Broncos finally getting some national recognition. This was on the ESPN front page, and it was a article entitled Super Bowl 60, previewing the breakout stars and candidates and teams. And in this article, each of the authors picked who they thought was going to be the breakout team. And you see the Denver Broncos were the breakout candidate for this author who said, hey, last year we completely exceeded all the expectations for us, and now we have $50 million to play with. We have George Paton, who's just cleaned up in the draft. We have Sean Payton, who knows what he wants. And the only place to go from a breakout, if you've already made the playoffs, is to the Super Bowl, and it's going to happen. Now, towards the end of last season, we saw the Denver Broncos truly have some pretty big troubles with guarding the middle of the field, and then in the Buffalo game and that Ravens game, we just could not stop the run at times. And so a lot of fingers have been pointed at that middle linebacker position. Like, we know our edges are good, but after Singleton went down, that was a problem. And that was a problem going into the season, even with Singleton healthy. And then all of a sudden he goes down in week 3 and you're like, what is going to happen? And Barton stepped up and Strnad stepped up. But that is a position where if we have $50 million in cap space, this is something that we need to do something about if we choose to. And so there are a ton of candidates for who the Broncos could throw $50 million at, and it doesn't all have to go to one person. But if we decide that we want to really beef up that middle linebacker, that inside linebacker position, someone who can guard both tight ends and help in the run game, who are the different candidates? So I in this video, we're going to break down who I think are the 3 free agent candidates, plus who are a couple of the candidates on this team who maybe we haven't seen the ceiling with. So we got to start off here with Dre Greenlaw. He, of course, is famous because in the game, the Kansas City Chiefs against the San Francisco 49ers in last year's Super Bowl, his video still makes me sick to my stomach. He's like getting hyped and getting ready to run back onto the field of play, and he's just bouncing up and down on his toes, basically, and his Achilles just pops like that. You were talking about he's going to be 28 by the time the season starts next year, and that is Dre Greenlaw. Now, he is an absolute game wrecker. His ability to truly help in the run game is on full display every single time he hits the field. Just watching this game against the Rams, you just look at the hole that he seemingly has wide open to him, and you're like, oh, that's probably a first down or at least like a 5-yard game. And out of nowhere, you see Greenlaw make a tackle for a loss. When was the last time you saw a linebacker hit like that for the Denver Broncos? Again, being able to see him, guard little dump-offs there and close space in a hurry. And then obviously being able to tackle tight ends, being able to even hang with receivers. He is an absolute difference maker, Dre Greenlaw. Now, the issue with Dre Greenlaw is probably the fact that he is old and coming off of an Achilles injury. Those aren't combinations that you necessarily want. He may be able to be the cheapest of the candidates because he indeed is coming off an injury, but you just look at him, absolute game wrecker in Dre Greenlaw. And exciting to see what he could bring to this inside linebacker position. And he is very, very wanted by a lot of people. The next name that is getting a ton of buzz is Zack Baun. Zack Baun, of course, was linked to Sean Payton, actually gave Sean Payton a ton of love in his Super Bowl media days because Sean Payton was the one who drafted him. And he was actually a candidate for being NFL Defensive Player of the Year, but we all know that was Pat Surtain who won that thing. Obviously, he had probably one of the sickest interceptions of the entire Super Bowl, and it felt incredible to watch him read Patrick Mahomes and read his eyes and then just dive and make this diving interception of Patrick Mahomes. One of my favorite parts of the entire Super Bowl, because that was really like, all right, this thing's over. They're not going to be able to come back from this. So you see his zone coverage ability, and that's what Vance Joseph talked about as we really started struggling down towards the end of that season. He talked about by the end of the season, every offense who's prepped for you already knows what your zones are going to look like. So you have to be very, very good at playing those zones because they have your plays already. And you see, even though he guarded that zone perfectly, that wasn't right to him. He had to make an athletic play. And then we've seen him also step up and be a capable run defender as well. He had one of the fumble caused in the playoff game against the Commanders. You see him in space there, just incredible lateral movement and vertical movement, just a beast of a human being. I think he might be one of the more expensive pieces in free agency if we were to get a shot with him. Looking at him being able to handle the chip, shrug off that block there, that was sick. Next candidate, Nick Bolton. Kind of crazy that Nick Bolton has been in the NFL, I feel like, for a long time, but he's only 24 years old, so he might actually be the most expensive piece. I think the reason I'd be so excited about Nick Bolton would be because not only are we getting better, but the Kansas City Chiefs are getting worse. And so it's almost like a win-win scenario there. But if I were to guess the price range of these guys, I'd say it's probably Nick Bolton would be the highest paid of these free agents, then Zack Baun, and then Greenlaw probably. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And again, we have a cash-rich owner who can structure this deal in a great way. But the Chiefs are already essentially moving on from him. If you look at any Kansas City Chiefs beat reporter, they're all talking about the fact that they're going to most likely, almost positively, lose him in free agency just because, as we've covered earlier this week, 70% of their salary cap is tied up in those five players who we've talked about. But Nick Bolton, absolute game maker, game wrecker. His speed is wild. Just looking like in most NFL circumstances, like you look at that angle, and Trevor Lawrence should be dancing into the end zone here, and you just see his ability to step up into space and make that tackle for a couple yard loss there when it looked like a walk-in touchdown there for him. Obviously we saw what he did against us several times, seeing him stopping the run here. Like, look at that, man. Like, that's Bijan Robinson right there. And just a huge fourth down. You see him hit that hole better than the running back did. So absolutely wild. We've seen him fly around forever and make plays. And so that could be sick because it makes them worse and it makes us better. And then we could go back and take a look at some of his plays all the way back when he was in college, and he's just been a game wrecker forever, and he's fairly young. So those are the three free agents who are most talked about in NFL circles. Let me know, of those three free agents, which one would get you most hyped? Who do you think is the smartest move for the Broncos to make? Which one do you think actually might happen? But then there's a couple candidates on our actual roster now who could fill in for that spot. So you could say, hey, if we just have Barton and Singleton run it back again, you have Singleton come in instead of Stranad, and you're good because Barton played okay. I don't love that. Other option is Drew Sanders, who we saw coming back after his Achilles injury. I like him on the edge, and so I don't really see that either, but a lot of people do. The one sneaky dark horse candidate for me who's currently on the roster would be Lavelle Bailey. You remember he was one of our undrafted guys who Sean Payton called not just once, but called twice during the NFL draft and convinced to come to Denver. And Lavelle Bailey said one of the reasons he picked the Broncos was because no other head coach even called him one time. He had tons of, defensive coordinators reach out or assistant coaches reach out, but Sean Payton was the only head coach who reached out to him. And if you're doing that, if your head coach is calling you two different times in the draft saying, hey, come to Denver when this whole draft plays out, that's a great sign that Sean Payton loved him. And we just remember his biggest moments of the year. Here's him back in college. You just see his ability there in coverage there to make that sick interception. There's not a lot of linebackers who can fake the blitz like that and then drop back into coverage like that. That was sick. But then the moment for me that was so exciting was this pick six here for 96, 94 yards. You saw his athleticism here, rocking 56, looked like Shane Ray there. Pretty exciting. And then you saw after this play here in the preseason against the Cardinals, you just saw our bench absolutely lose it. And so you see he's like a locker room dude as well. And the Broncos structured their cuts at the end of training camp in a way. Like they moved on from Samaje Perine and Tim Patrick, probably because Sean Payton knew that Lavelle Bailey was going to get picked off there. So might this be an opportunity where we use that $50 million to go and get T. Higgins or go and get Deebo Samuel, and instead we let Lavelle Bailey and Singleton rock it? So let me know which of those options do you think it is the best. We got to end here. I need to give you all some advice. It is Valentine's Day. So you need to know like what to say to your lady. And if you want to use like Broncos pickup lines, you could just be like, call me Sean Payton because I got the perfect game plan to get to your heart. That would work. Or you could just like flex like Audric Estime and take your shirt off and just say, don't underestimate my love for you. Like that's an option. Or here's some better ones from the internet because they're way better. You could say, I'm going to be like Pat Surtain and lock you up. That's good. Like lock you up, like my love for you up. You could call your lady Bonito, which means beautiful in Spanish, or maybe that's Bonita. Same thing. I'm jonesing for you. You got Brandon Jones. That's cool. DNVR crushed it on these. I love them. I love you a Singleton. Like I love you a lot. Or like I don't want to be Singleton. Date me. Those would work. But I think my favorite comes here from Carson on Twitter, and he said, you're a perfect 10 with Bo Nix. So which of those are you going to roll with tonight? Whichever one. I wish you the best of luck and a very happy Valentine's Day, and we got a ton to Bo-LIEVE in.